We have another breaking update coming in. We're learning that attacks are continuing across the Middle East. Missile alerts have been sounded in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, despite the United States suspending de-escalating attacks on Iran and also agreeing to enter into back-channel talks. Israel has warned that at least 2 rounds of missiles have been fired by Iran ever since Donald Trump announced the ceasefire plan. Blasts were heard in Jerusalem and also another area in occupied West Bank, and that is what we are learning so far, that despite the ceasefire announcement, missile alerts continue across Gulf. On that, let me go across to my colleague Srinjoy. Srinjoy, we're learning that despite the ceasefire announcement that came from Donald Trump just less than 2 hours ahead of the deadline that was to be expired, Iran continues to attack the Gulf countries. There have been attacks in Israel as well. So is there a possibility that that information, as far as the ceasefire is concerned, has not trickled down to the military level?
Let's hope these attacks, there probably 1 or 2 attacks, are isolated and they end very quickly, because it's very important that the ceasefire holds. Now, you rightly said that it is possible that some people did not hear about the ceasefire. Maybe, we don't know where these people are launching missiles from. But at the end of the day, everyone should know that there is a ceasefire for 14 days. And this is an opportunity for both sides to actually work towards a solution. Whether there will ever be a solution to all the problems, we don't know. But at least you can work towards it. And that itself is a positive. Now, naturally, if missiles have been fired, it's a worrying thought. But let's hope that this is an isolated one. And if there have been 2 or 3 missiles fired, these are the last 2 or 3 missiles that have been fired as far as this war is concerned.
Absolutely, because Iran has said that they want a complete halt on the attacks as far as the war is concerned. So it remains to be seen whether these were isolated or whether the war will escalate further. But for now, what we know so far is that there is a ceasefire, 14-day-long ceasefire plan in place. Let me also bring in Sarah Spector, attorney and Democrat analyst. I want to understand from you how Americans, the common person there, Democrats, Republican, they are reacting to the ceasefire plan that United States has put forth. Because in the last few days, several of the legal experts were saying that a deliberate attempt, intentional attempt to attack power plants, the civilian infra, amounts to war crimes. So how are people reacting as far as the ceasefire is concerned? Is there a sigh of relief?
Well, it's pretty late breaking here, and I haven't really heard a lot of reaction. I know that I live in a predominantly Republican district, and I have heard nothing but complaints from Republicans, people who voted for Trump, that this is not what they expected. And it's, again, living in the Permian Basin, which is basically, the economy is all based on the oil industry. They are not happy because it basically put any predictions of the future of the oil economy into chaos again. So I'm sure they're happy with the announcement of a ceasefire. I don't know anyone, literally anyone, and I live in an 80% Republican district. I don't know anyone who was happy about this conflict that we got into. I don't know anyone who understood the reason for it. And I know that a lot of people, it will take a lot to get over the feelings of basically that Trump lied to them and ran on an isolationist economy, ran on a promise that of drill baby drill, and it has been nothing but disappointment here, and nobody wanted a war here. Nobody understands it, and I'm sure they're very relieved at a ceasefire. But again, this is a highly educated district, and it does not go without knowledge that our populace knows that we basically already spent billions of taxpayer dollars in a war that we basically got nothing out of.
Absolutely. So that's your assessment. Let me also bring in Colonel Utkarsh Rathore. Sir, want to understand from you, as far as the back channel talks are underway, what's your assessment of the role of Pakistan? Because if you go by the social media posts of Donald Trump and Iran's foreign minister, both of them have thanked the Pakistani Prime Minister and Asim Munir as well. So what is your assessment of the role that Pakistan is playing as far as the war is concerned?
Pakistan has been working hard on getting a peace ceasefire or peace talks with Iran and America, and they have succeeded to a thing like the acknowledgement has come from Donald Trump himself, and the ex-post from the Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif. So they have succeeded, and they have been working at it for a very long time, and there were many instances of disappointment and failure. Like this 10-point formula had come 3 days back, and it was rejected by America. So there is a thing that there was a channel which was opened, and it has actually worked. But Akansha, I would like to tell you one thing here. If this ceasefire works, a peace returns to Gulf, what would be the status of America? Would it be back to status quo, where it was not welcome in Iran, where it will not have any diplomatic foothold in Iran, like for last 47 years it has been treated like one? And so what would be the future of Iran, America and Iran-Israel relationship? And coupled with this, what would be the new dynamics of relations between Iran and the Gulf countries? Because the Gulf countries have also suffered a hell of a lot from the attacks from Iran. So this is going to, if it's going to hold, but there going to be too much of remodeling is required. And it has to be done very, very carefully. There was a talk about that something is going to happen, that NATO might come here. It will not be liked by Iran. If NATO has to come, NATO may try to find a role in controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And this will surely be not liked by Iran. Iran will not like the entry of any other party to control Strait of Hormuz. So these 14 days are very, very delicate, and this fragile peace must be preserved at all costs by having a very pragmatic and very, very patient peace negotiators to work on this.
Absolutely. Next 14 days are going to be very important. You spoke about NATO allies, because Donald Trump had been seeking their help for the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, but they have made it quite clear that this is not their war. But let's focus on the back channel talks that will continue for the next 14 days. They are underway. Several countries are also involved. But the question is, who from Iran is leading the negotiation? On that, I want to bring in Srinjoy once again. Srinjoy, I'm asking this question because right now there is a civilian government in place in Iran. But in the absence of Mojtaba Khamenei, IRGC has taken over. There seems to be a divergence. So who actually is carrying out the back channel negotiations as far as Iran is concerned?
Perhaps Vice President Vance said what he said, knowing what was happening, because he said when word gets back to Iran, it goes from one person to another person to a third person, and it takes time. So it's entirely possible that a group of people are involved, or 2 or 3 different groups are involved, and that is why it is taking longer. Yes, the Revolutionary Guards are definitely involved because they have a significant say in the running of the country. About that, there is no doubt. Then, of course, you have a president, you have a foreign minister, you have other leaders, you have a political leadership. So all of that is there. At the end of the day, naturally, word gets from one person to another person to a third person, and then a decision is arrived at. As the Vice President said, it takes time, it takes patience, But at the end of the day, regardless of who was talking with whom in Iran and who were involved in the negotiations, we have arrived at a kind of peace. We have arrived at a kind of ceasefire, which everyone hopes will hold for 14 days and longer.
Absolutely. So it remains to be seen how this really pans out for the next 14 days. Those are going to be very important. Let me once again bring in Sierra Claire, foreign policy analyst. How do you assess the ceasefire plan? Because as far as US is concerned, they had a 15-point peace plan. Iran had a 10-point peace plan. Who do you think, now that the ceasefire plan has been announced, ceasefire has been imposed for the next 14 days, who has more bargaining chip as far as this war is concerned?
Well, I'm very glad to see a ceasefire, but I don't think that it was done because Trump needed an off-ramp. The U.S. still maintains quite a bit of leverage over Iran. The one most important point in these talks that are going to start on Friday is going to be what's happening to the enriched uranium. The Iranians need to turn that over to somebody, whether it be the U.S. or the IAEA. And so I think that's going to be a major point that we still need to see if they're willing to do that. It's a great sign, though, that they opened up the Strait of Hormuz as a kind of goodwill gesture. I think somebody characterized it, because that shows that they are willing to be reasonable, which is what President Trump has been saying all along, that he wants to negotiate. Of course, no, Americans don't enjoy being at war. We did it because it was necessary. But he wants to negotiate, and he wants to negotiate with someone reasonable. And so, that's what can happen now.
Absolutely. Let me also bring in Sarah Spector, attorney and Democratic analyst. I want to ask you about the objective, because when the war started, Donald Trump made it quite clear that #1 objective is regime change. So essentially, we saw Khamenei be replaced with a Khamenei. Then he said that Iranians must take to the streets. That has not happened as well. They wanted to destroy the nuclear capability. Donald Trump has said that has happened, but that is something that Iran has outrightly rejected as well. So how do you think the objectives have also shifted over the past 1 month? Because now the #1 objective remains the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. So do you think the objectives have shifted over the last 1 month?
Sure. Iran controlled the objective, right? Iran basically rewrote the script. And so now we're on the defensive, right? We had an agreement with Iran to deflate their uranium, to get rid of their nuclear capabilities through Obama, and Trump just tore it up. He said that we couldn't trust Iran. And now we're back to negotiating with Iran and trusting Iran. And now we have even less leverage, because Iran now knows that they can control the strait. They can control. Now we know that they can reach our bases and our military bases all over the Middle East. Now they have also threatened and the Dubai and places that were thought safe from the Middle East conflicts. And so Iran has basically written the script. Iran has written the script in this war. We have even a more dangerous leader in the son of the Khomeini. He has more anger toward us because we've murdered his father, I believe a child, his wife. And he's young. I mean, we basically took out a man who was in his middle 80s, who was about, didn't have much life left, and now put in a young and a young person who is more vigilant than his father. So, I mean, Iran is writing the story right now, unfortunately, and Trump put us in this mess.
Absolutely. And many of the experts also believe that as far as the bargaining chips are concerned, Iran is controlling the narrative as of now. But the breaking update is that there is a ceasefire for the next 14 days. There will be no bombing of the power plants, as Donald Trump had said just a few hours back that he will be wiping out the entire civilization in Iran. That will not be happening. There will be back-channel talks that will continue over the next 2 weeks. Thank you so much to all our guests for joining and bringing your perspective on this. With this, a very short break. More news and updates on the other side.